We have such sights to show you. Hello, Wolfpack. Welcome to Hell, otherwise known as YouTube, because there's almost little to no difference if you're a creator here. Catastrophe here, and if you didn't read the title, we're going to be doing a ranking tier list of all the Hellraiser movies. Here I am, rock you like a hurricane. Hey, just some random guy, glad to have you here. You're the first one in line. We're doing the Hellraiser saga. This is a saga I honestly do want to talk about, and I did want a ranking on it. However, there is no way in hell I will be able to get you videos on this series without getting age restricted or censoring out all the good parts. So we're gonna cut out the middleman and just do a tier list on all of the Pinhead saga. For those of you who don't know, Hellraiser is a saga about literal hauntings from demons from hell, featuring the head demon, a monster known as Pinhead. Who you calling Pinhead? Yeah, if you can't tell, Pinhead is pretty much the mascot of this franchise. He's the face on literally every movie. He's the known killer slash antagonist everyone associates with the Hellraiser movies, despite ironically not being the central villain in the first one. In the first movie, it's actually Frank and Julia Cotton who are kind of the villains, while Pinhead is a secondary antagonist. But from movie 2 onward, Pinhead kind of became the main antagonist of this entire saga. Hi, Akira Yamaguchi, the Kitsune. Glad to have you. We're talking about Hellraiser. In the first one, I believe he was simply credited as lead Cenobite. Yeah, that's who he was. The Cenobites didn't exactly have names. The fandom and the movies basically gave them nicknames. The Hellraiser monsters are the Cenobites, who are basically monsters slash demons or angels from hell. In the original story, they're actually supposed to be interdimensional travelers, like from a Lovecraftian type of lore. They're from space, they're from reaches unknown, they're from the dark, we don't know where they're from. However, the movies kind of converted them into demons from hell. They basically became representatives of Satan, the torture masters, bringing souls down to hell by convincing them to seek the ultimate pleasures. Pinhead still need to be in death battle with the Tall Man. Yeah, that might be a cool fight. I do think Pinhead might win because he has those chains while the Tall Man has those easily breakable spheres. So, Cat's back. I got my 500 waters here to drink in between sentences for you. I really like the Hellraiser saga. I will warn you, this is a very hardcore, bloody, R-rated horror saga. It is super scary, and it ultimately relies on a lot of body horror, demon imagery, and psychosexual themes. Because the Cenobites basically are so evolved in their society that they believe pain and pleasure are the same thing. Like, they get sexual gratification from causing pain. They're sadomasochists. They like hurting people. They like getting hurt. And it makes them very creepy because pain, torture, is the same thing as their pleasure. They basically offer the ultimate pleasure to souls who seek it through the lament configuration, these magic boxes that were scattered across the universe, and whoever gets them and solves the puzzle can unlock an audience with the Cenobites, and they can show you the great things your mind could never comprehend, and surprise, it includes a lot of bloody murder, torture, and gruesome body horror. I dare someone to make a PG-13 Hellraiser, or maybe even a G. I think Billy and Mandy kind of did that. We had Pinface. He was summoned through the Rubik's Cube Billy had. It was a pretty funny homage. Basically, the main lead Cenobite of this is Pinhead, who's sort of like the supervisor of hell. He's in hell, he does all the deals, he does all the talking, he sponsors them. He's the person in charge of all the torture that goes on in hell, and basically a middle management worker working for Satan, or in the Hellraiser lore, the Leviathan, who is basically their god. It's this giant puzzle box demon in the sky, which gazes upon an entire labyrinth of people basically suffering in their own pleasure slash torture chambers. Very, very fun franchise, though. It is, despite being horrible and very bloody, it is super creative, very inventive, and very mythical. This is why the Cenobites are very popular. They're not exactly your typical slasher killers. Pinhead is more so a chaotic neutral. This is a guy who does commit evil, and he's a scary SOB, but he's more reasonable. He's more level-headed. He doesn't gain like a sick, twisted idea of tormenting people. He just sees it as actually being good and helping people by letting them in on their society and their ways. He's kind of like showing it off, letting them in, and he believes he's doing good dragging these innocent souls into the ultimate torture chambers. Also, the Book of Hellraiser is cool. Yeah, Hellraiser was created by Clive Barker, who many of you know as also the creator of Candyman. Clive Barker wrote Hellbound. It was the book that inspired Hellraiser, and the book was adapted into the first two movies here, Hellraiser 1 and Hellraiser 2 / Hellbound. However, by movie 3, the franchise kind of evolved into its own thing, and unfortunately, a lot of these sequels did not turn out well, and Clive Barker completely separated himself from them after movie 4 because they went that far down the toilet. Yeah, Hellraiser actually did have a book. They did change a lot. Namely, the main protagonist, Kirsty Cotton, is a girl who has a crush on Larry Cotton in the book, but in the movie, it's his daughter, and that gave them more of a connection and more reason for her to be around Larry and Julia without making it feel creepy. Also, James have to do the other half of Hellraiser. Oh, I mean, James A. Janisse, the dead meat guy. Yeah, he did all the theatrical ones. Hellraiser had only 5 theatrical releases. Hellraiser 1 through 4 all came to theaters, and basically half of these are all direct-to-video, direct-to-streaming crap, which gives you a clue of the horror show we're in for later. Hellraiser started out as a cool franchise, but is infamously one of the franchise that went downhill like halfway through. It had a lot of garbage sequels, a lot of cheap production, a lot of bad acting, the worst effects you'll ever see, and especially in the direct-to-video stuff, and yeah, a lot of hastily made movies which had no association with Hellraiser, but just had the brand name on there so they could maintain the copyrights. Yeah, though I hope he doesn't lose his mind. Where is my mind, even? Also, why Hellraiser changed Pinhead gender? Yeah, I was about to get to that then. After the direct-to-video crap, Judgment was the last one that was direct-to-video. We got another one in theaters / streaming, the reboot Hellraiser, where we got the female Pinhead. Okay, so ordinarily I hate unnecessary gender changes and race lifts, but to be fair, there was a reason for this. So, in the book, Pinhead actually was kind of androgynous. He had a very vague gender. They didn't even use, like, the proper he or she pronouns or whatever to identify him. Pinhead was so mutilated and deformed and twisted that you could not tell what gender Pinhead was. He was like kind of you couldn't tell if he was male or female. He was kind of a cross of both because the tortures he endured in the Cenobite realm were that grotesque and brutal that it was unidentifiable. And this led to like a lot of hot debate that Pinhead could be male or could be female. So the reboot basically took advantage of that and got like a transgender woman to play Pinhead in the new reboot because transgender people are also kind of fit that description. Yeah, so we got the female Pinhead, I don't remember her name, like Jamie something. I thought she was pretty good, actually. She was okay. I did not like all the Twitter feed around them saying Pinhead was some kind of LGBT icon because, you know, Pinhead's a monster from hell, but whatever. I just learned that Curious George was once something else and the opposite gender until his creators fled to America from Europe. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. A lot of unnecessary studio changes. And as you can see, there are quite a few movies, actually, but Hellraiser is considered a horror legend in the horror community, but outside of that, most people don't even know there's a movie beyond the first and the reboot. There was a lot in between. The first 4 sequels were all like a main timeline saga. These were all the theatrical ones. Then all the direct-to-video ones were basically kind of spin-offs and side tales. A lot of them were actually original horror movies, which they awkwardly slapped the Hellraiser brand name on, and Pinhead shows up from time to time in them. And yeah, that was supposed to help make them sell better. And spoilers, they were not very good movies, but we'll talk about that in detail soon. And then the saga basically came back. A lot of people do defend Hellraiser Judgment because it's the first that actually feels like it tried doing something with the Cenobite lore, which I will give credit for, but we'll get to that. And then the reboot came and everyone loved it, but I have more mixed feelings on that. We'll get to that. I'm sure you're all looking forward to what we have to say. So, to any of you who don't know how a tier list works, we do have to explain for if this is your first tier list ever. We're going to be ranking all, I believe, 10 of the Hellraiser movies on this tier list to tell you my thoughts on them and tell you how good or how awful or how mediocre they are. Top of the tier, we have such sights to show you. Epic quotes. These are definitely the high movies. These are the greatest stories in the franchise. These I highly recommend. These are awesome. These are the ones the horror community love and basically what solidified Pinhead's status as a horror legend. Then we have Come to Daddy. These are the ones that are good, not great. They definitely had good moments. They were definitely interesting. I will say that they were decent movies. However, they were far from perfect masterpieces. Let's just say that. They were definitely fun movies, but not perfection. Then, Demons to some, angels to others. If it isn't obvious, this is the okay. It is average. It has some good, but also some bad. It does have some fans who like it. It does have good ideas, but it just failed to leap that final hurdle into the status of legendary. Then we have A Waste of Good Suffering. These are stories that were weak. There was a spark of hope there. There was definitely a cool idea in this film, but it just didn't amount to much as you'd hope and really needed improvement. And finally, we have Tear Your Soul Apart. These are awful. These are the bad ones. The ones that deserve to die. The ones that we are going to rip apart, tear its soul out. Awful, awful movies. And unfortunately, we're probably going to be seeing a lot down here on the bottom. I bet on my soul that you'll tear one of the last 3 souls apart. Yeah, We'll get to that. This is a franchise which started out great, but slowly snowballed into crap. This is one people consider one of the greatest horror franchises that suffered awful sequels in its later days. So with that, I think we should finally start my ranking on the Hellraiser saga. So we should start, of course, where it all began with movie 1, Hellraiser. So, I think it goes without saying that this one goes all the way up top. We have such sights to show you. This is the horror classic. This is the one that put Pinhead on the map. This is the one that basically started it all. We follow actually a pretty huge ensemble cast. We follow the Cotton family. There's trying to remember. Larry Cotton, Frank Cotton, Julia Cotton, and our main hero, the final girl, Kirsty Cotton, who you'll all be seeing on a future video real soon. Basically, the family moves into Frank Cotton's house after it's abandoned. Frank Cotton was this really disgusting, disturbing deviant in life, and basically he was a total hedonist. He was a bad boy who did whatever he wanted. He had an affair with Julia Cotton. They had like a secret relationship before she ended up marrying his nice guy brother. However, he broke up and went to go live his life having fun and adventure, but eventually he got bored and sought the greatest pleasures of life this miserable world had to offer, and he stumbles upon the Lament configuration, a magic box which can take you to the afterlife, allegedly heaven and hell. And he believes that unlocking this box will allow a soul to gain the greatest nirvana experience you'll ever have. And he believes he got heaven, but he rolled a bad roll and got hell. Also, good thing you don't have an AI lady reading the chat, otherwise people would be spamming these. Yeah. And if I'm wrong, then my soul will be torn apart. You'll probably be right what lands there. Basically, Frank accidentally unlocks hell and finds out, this isn't what I signed up for. The Cenobites basically believe that pain and torture give you pleasure. They have evolved so highly and are so deformed and monstrous that our pain is what gives them, like, sexual gratification, real pleasure, really deep, disturbed, screwed up, psychosexual horror, and basically they kill Frank, rip him apart, and drag his soul down to hell. However, like, a speck of Frank's soul is still haunting the house. So, years later, Frank's brother, Larry Cotton, played by Garrick from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and his family basically inherit the mansion from his brother because his brother, quote-unquote, went missing and everyone assumes is dead. They move into the haunted house. Kirsty is very reluctant. She doesn't immediately move into the house, but she wants to keep an eye on her parents. We meet Julia Cotton, who's Larry's second wife, actually. She and the family have kind of a strained relationship since she's kind of the wicked stepmother. She doesn't fit in. She and Kirsty don't really bond all that much, and it's very obvious she has, like, bored housewife syndrome. She doesn't like Larry as much anymore, and was basically some nice guy she settled down with, but she doesn't truly love anymore. The spark is long gone. She was more infatuated with his bad boy brother Frank, who was super hot and handsome and sexy and very forceful, a masculine man, unlike the loser twink soy boy Larry. Basically, we stumble on this house. It's very clear there's something eerie about this house. The Cotton House mansion is very creepy and unsettling. It's this very unnerving set. Kirsty, like, has these nightmares and these vague traumatic flashbacks. You hear, like, a baby crying. There's very Silent Hill-esque imagery happening here. And, Julia basically gets a hold of some old memorabilia of Frank and holds on to it. And Larry is trying to move into the house, trying to keep the family together. You feel really sorry for Larry because he's such a nice guy, but also, like, kind of being cucked by his wife completely. She does not love him, but you like him because he's nice to Kirsty and trying to get them to be like a happy family again. It's implied that something very terrible happened in this house long before demons showed up. Let's just say that. However, while moving in, Larry, like, carrying stuff upstairs, accidentally cuts his hand really gruesomely on a nail sticking out of the wall, and he drips blood on the satanic circle where Frank died. And this leads to Frank resurrecting as this creepy, disgusting, like, skinless zombie. Cat, your voice is going out every few seconds. Yeah, I am. I'm really getting into this, okay? I have my water here. So Frank, like, accidentally like Frank resurrects here. We find out he's alive, and he like lives in the attic, like kind of, what's the word? I'm trying to remember. He's like, basically he's like squatting there. That's it. He's squatting up in the attic. Nobody knows he's there yet. He's like hidden up top watching the family below. Then he crosses paths with Julia, and he basically convinces her to help him become human, immortal again. He has a way to escape. Like, this helped him escape hell, and he wants to come back to life, basically, and not be forever bound to the Cenobites. However, to do this, he needs human sacrifices where he goes all Imhotep on them and eats their skin and organs to revive his body back to normal human status again. Okay, for a moment I thought I was broke my phone. Yeah, so basically he convinces Julia to help him become mortal again, and part of this movie is basically Julia's origin story. She goes from kind of an unpleasant person into a full-blown monster, basically getting into her sin. She's reluctant at first to help Frank kill people, but then as soon as she starts doing it, she gets a disturbing taste for it. She's like really into it. She's indulging in sin and finding out that evil feels, and basically she's doing this for very shallow and short-sighted reasons. She here? Okay. Sorry, Wolf was passing through. Yeah, part of this movie is Julia's origin story, which sort of tricks you into believing she's like the villain protagonist because we spend quite a lot of time with her. She's kind of like this innocent being corrupted, indulging in sin, doing heinous and disturbing things, basically. And she becomes Frank's partner in crime. She seduces several men, brings them into the house, and basically kills them, and Frank eats them. He, like, eats them kind of mummy style, swallowing their soul and devouring their skin, and very slowly he, like, starts gaining his muscle tissue back. He gains some patches of skin. He can live normally. He can taste and interact with our world. And very disturbing body horror, this one, because it's like a slow evolution process. However, we eventually get our real protagonist, Kirsty Cotton. She's doing stuff on the sides, like getting stalked by this weird, sketchy, homeless-looking guy who's following her for unknown reasons. We find out in a twist it's because he, like, smells the scent of hell on her, and that's part of the reason why, because every time she goes to the Cotton Mansion, she's getting, like, the scent of the devil magic on her. Did you turn off the audio for a bit? Because I couldn't hear anything for about 7 seconds. Oh, I don't know. I could be stopped talking, like, in between. Also, any Christmas special review, like maybe a DC Christmas, like Brave and the Bold? Actually, I'm trying to work on a Goosebumps crossover right now. I'm working on that with a partner who still needs to get back to me. Yeah, and unfortunately, the problem with my crossover reviews is that there is a lot of communication and waiting time involved. I did my half of the crossover, but I need my partner to do their second half and get back to me so we can finally get together and start editing this thing. I'm not sure if we'll do a Christmas special this year. I didn't think anyone was really interested. So yeah, basically Kirsty finally steps in. She finally investigates this house when she notices Julie luring in, like, what, the 20th man into his doom, basically. Follows them up, believes that Julia's having an affair, only to find out she's right, but also wrong. She goes into the house and finds Frank's next victim and learns that, oh, Frank is a monster in their house and he's back. Frank confronts Kirsty and there's very subtle dialogue that implies something happened between them, and Frank threatens her to keep her quiet, but however, she gets her paws on the puzzle box, which is still there in the attic. She gets her paws on the puzzle box, but finds out that through Frank's reaction that it's important, and he wants it back and begs her not to do anything hasty, but she chucks it out the window and escapes, basically, while Frank shrieks in pain and knows this might come back to bite him. Frank screams, but he can't leave the house because he's still kind of a skinless meat monster looking thing. Kirsty escapes with the puzzle box and runs for her life until she eventually passes out and is taken to a hospital. Could you give us a hint on the Goosebumps crossover episode? Not like the name of the episode, but just a small hint. Okay, I'm doing a crossover review with a friend, and we're doing a really weird episode my friend wanted to talk about. It is one of the more outrageously bizarre and insane Goosebumps stories. I'm looking forward to talking about it, but I just need my partner to get back to me. But I see Batman Brave and the Bold have a Christmas special in episode 4. Yeah, but I'm not sure if I want to talk about the Red Tornado learning the spirit of Christmas. I know it's a good episode and all, but I'm not sure my viewers are really into that. It took forever for my Flash review to kind of pick up speed. So, back to Kirsty. When she's left alone in the room, the doctor gives her the puzzle box, where we finally learn of its purpose. The puzzle box is a key that can open up portals to heaven and hell. And Kirsty tries to figure it out, basically why Frank thought it was so important, why he wanted it back, and she accidentally unlocks the hell portal, which is going to be the portal everyone accidentally unlocks in most of these movies. I bet it's my hairiest adventure. Could be. She accidentally unlocks the portal to hell and explores. There's this really creepy chase scene where she encounters the demon. This is the engineer from the book. It's this very creepy Lovecraftian looking monster, a bit of a weird Muppet looking thing though. It like chases her, she escapes it. However, this is where she bumps into the Cenobites, where halfway through the movie we officially meet Pinhead. Like, we meet Pinhead and his group called a Gash. There's Pinhead, a demon man who with pale white skin, chains all around him, looking like a leather goth, and a whole bunch of, like, needles sticking out of his face, basically. He has, like, pins all over him, like he looks like a medical mannequin. Very creepy, played by Doug Bradley, a horror legend. He went down forever as this role, and he really owns it. Basically, Pinhead was the only Cenobite actor who could talk without ruining his makeup, and this led to Pinhead basically having all the lines in the spotlight, and why a lot of people ended up falling in love with him as a horror icon. Also, Hellraiser have the weirdest and longest kill count. Yeah, it does. They're demons from hell. You gotta remember, they're dragging their souls down to be forever tortured in the abyss. And Pinhead and his Gash really love killing. We meet the OG group of Cenobites, Pinhead's team. These are basically his enforcers, his right-hand men and women, his loyal minions. We meet the fan favorites, a female Cenobite with this weird throat hole that's like spread out and basically held like a necklace, and she talks in this creepy, distorted voice. She's called female because she's literally the only one they can identify her gender, because all the Cenobites are that screwed up from their surgeries. We meet the Chatterer, who is pretty much Nemesis from Resident Evil. He has this grotesque mouth that's always clicking, no eyes, just like a deformed face. He looks like Nemesis from Resident Evil. He's basically their muscle. And we meet Butterball, this overweight fat guy with creepy, sinister shades and sewn together eyes. He looks very weird and Homer Simpson-esque. Raise your hand if you're a 21st century baby. Don't if you're a 20th century baby. Can't really show you when I raise or don't raise my hand through the monitor. And this is where we're formally introduced to the Cenobites. They are basically explorers. They are recruiters of hell. They go out and find souls seeking the ultimate pleasure, which to them is pain and suffering. They believe that their sadomasochism, ultimate be it BDSM kind of style, is something they want to share and spread upon the world like missionaries. And unfortunately, they stumble upon a lot of hapless souls who open the box not knowing what it is, and that counts as selling your soul to them, where they take you to hell and basically kill and torture you for eternity. Also, isn't Extreme Ghostbusters have a parody of Cenobites on a cartoon? Yes, they did. Extreme Ghostbusters. R.L. Stine created the Cenobites in that show. And they basically came to life and were killing people there too. Ultimately, the Cenobites' evil plan is they want to make more demons like them. The taking you down to torture basically converts you into a deformed body horror mercenary just like them. They're creating more of their own kind. This was Pinhead's motivation in the first few movies, but ultimately later, the bad directors kind of lost sight of that, and he just became a slasher. They basically threaten to take Kirsty because she opened the box, and that means like, oh, you summoned us, which means you want this, you want us to take you to our world. However, Kirsty, one of my favorite final girls, has her first awesome moment where she basically makes a deal with them. She reveals that, oh, Frank Cotton escaped from hell, I can take you to him, and you can take his soul back instead of me, and shockingly, this is why people like Pinhead. He actually does listen to her and reason. He's actually curious how she knows this, and he actually takes her up on her request. He's a reasonable villain, and that's why people love Pinhead. He's like, okay, we'll hear you out, and oh, you can take us to an escaped soul, then maybe we might release you. And yeah, the Cenobites actually do keep their word. They actually let her go and give her a time limit to find the guy who escaped them and prove her case. But if she cheats them, then they'll tear her soul apart and take her to hell. And this is why a lot of people lose the stream. Yeah, okay, my reconnection was apparently successful. Hello, is anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me. Is anybody there? Can't hear you. Sorry, my OBS apparently disconnected briefly. I think it's back. Yeah, it looks like it's back. Yeah, can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure if you guys can hear me, I didn't disconnect or lose you. Yeah, apparently my OBS disconnected. It said it got reconnected. Okay. Yeah, see, reconnection successful. Apparently there was a moment where I lost them. This is the first...
They can hear you.
Okay, they can.
Just making sure.
Alright, sorry, just a little technical glitch on our side. You didn't miss much, so I didn't rank the next movie yet. You're Herd Wolf. Okay, thank you, TRX Wolf. Yeah, sorry, a brief disconnect there. I don't know what happened. My OBS apparently reconnected. I was talking about, yeah, the final act of Hellraiser 1. Basically, this is where everything goes nuts and what solidified this in horror history. It turns out, like, Kirsty thinks everything's normal. We see a dead corpse that looks like Frank left out for them. The Cenobites come pissed off, demanding answers, but Kirsty is afraid they might take her father because Larry, quote-unquote, killed Frank. She runs back, and then we get the most disturbing part where, oh, it's not actually her dad, it's Frank, wearing his dead brother's skin. Well, this is gonna be a fun stream. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's actually Frank wearing Larry's skin. He killed his own brother and basically took his identity. And now he wants to finish the job, basically. He has his mortal life back and is free from the Cenobites and attacks Julia. There's a cool chase scene. He ultimately betrays Julia. He tries to kill Kirsty, but apparently misses her and accidentally kills Julia, then decides, oh, well, I'm done with you, nothing personal, baby, and he basically sacrifices her next to grow his skin back. Yeah, he kills Julia, betrays her, then ultimately, this leads to a fight scene. There's a chase scene throughout the Cotton Mansion. Kirsty eventually makes her way back to the room, and we find out that the corpse that was Frank is actually a skinless Larry. She cries over him, realizing that she was too late to save the day, and we have, really dark moments here, because this is where, a lot of Kirsty's baggage comes. She failed to save her family, Larry lost his life, the whole family's in turmoil now. And Frank comes in and finally confronts her, corners her, joking about how Larry was weak, and we get the big reveal that he molested Kirsty as a kid, and this is why they have such a strained relationship and why Kirsty hated this house, because Kirsty was touched by her creepy uncle. I hope the renegade virus isn't causing things to go off. Yeah, me neither. I hope this doesn't happen on future streams. We gotta do something with Emily Alucard later. We were gonna do the Freddy movies. So yeah, he corners her, we find out Frank's dark past with Kirsty, and then during his villain monologuing, he accidentally confesses that he's really Frank, and then the Cenobites step in and attack. They realize Kirsty was right, and they corner Frank, and we get the iconic kill of the series. Pinhead releases all his hell chains that hook his entire skin, piercing his body at different angles, grabbing him, suspending him in air, and giving him this really gruesome, deformed face. And basically, he kills Frank by completely fatalitying him, dismembering him, ripping him apart with all these chains. And Frank dies, where Pinhead takes over as the movie. He reveals, surprise, we're gonna take you to hell anyway. You're all going to hell. Who'd have thunk you couldn't trust demons from the darkness? So we get another chase scene. They're chasing Kirsty, and this cool effect where the house is literally being absorbed into hell. It's all falling apart. One of the Cenobites chasing Kirsty is scraping her daggers against the wall, and we see blood is leaking from the house walls. I hope it's not a living house like our haunting hour, buddy. And yeah, we get all these creepy imagery, the house is falling apart, it's being absorbed into hell. Then Kirsty finally discovers she can use the box to basically email the Cenobites back to hell. She uses it and banishes Pinhead and his gash, except for Butterball, who just dies. He gets hit by debris from the roof. Which is worse, Hellraiser or Saw in terms of gore? I would say Hellraiser, just because the victims are still alive while they're being tortured and body horrored. And there's a lot of gross stuff in Hellraiser too. Basically, yeah, everything falls apart. Kirsty's boyfriend shows up at the last minute, helps save the day. They fight the engineer Muppet again, and Kirsty finally closes the portal. They get out of the house just in time as hell burns it to the ground. And Kirsty conquers her inner demons, both literal and metaphorical. The abusive house is destroyed, and everything comes all hunky-dory. Until we get our twist ending. The crazy homeless guy who was stalking Kirsty all movie shows up at the last minute and reveals he was the summoned skull, and he takes the lament configuration box, but when they try burning it, and flies off with it to give to new idiots to be trapped by Pinhead one day. So, people are still confused by the twist ending to this day. We find out in, comics and supplementary material that The homeless guy who turns into the summoned skull is actually a Hell Guardian who was keeping watch over the box and the forces of Hell to basically ensure that they were doing their duty and maintaining its safety. He saves the configuration box from being destroyed, basically, so he can pass it on to someone else doing his Hell duty of safeguarding it. It's unfortunately not explained very well, and yeah, he basically flies off and sends it to someone else. Alright, just checking if you guys can hear me. Yeah. Basically, he takes the box and flies off with it, and that's the original Hellraiser. I really love this movie. I did a crossover podcast with the Spooky Dookie podcast. You guys should really listen to them. They're fun horror guys. We talked to 2 out of 3 of the horror show hosts. Apparently, the third guy couldn't make it, but they were pretty fun. We talked about this movie in depth, how much we liked about it, what made it so great, and got sidetracked into some other horror topics. Really fun podcast, but if you didn't see that podcast, I think it is legendary. The first movie is definitely up top. We have such sights to show you, and to this day, I still consider it a classic. Alright, hang on, I'll be right back. I gotta use the restroom. The doctor is in. I'm back, guys. Yes, I hope I jump scared you with that awesome quote. Next is Hellraiser 2, or aka Hellbound slash Hellraiser 2. This is the direct sequel to the first movie, and honestly the only one that feels like a real Hellraiser sequel in Hellraiser's story. It's like directly after the first one, we follow Kirsty Cotton, who's been put into an asylum to get treatment after everything that happened in the first movie, and basically everyone thinks she's crazy because she's talking about hell and all this weird stuff happened, and they're basically giving her like some treatment to help her overcome the trauma that happened to her in the first movie and readjust back to society. However, she gets picked up by one of the greatest villains, Dr. Channard, this corrupt Hugo Strange psychologist who actually believes her because he is a student studying the occult. He's studying the lament configurations and the hell powers himself. Dr. Channard is a really great character. He's this corrupt psychologist who's pretending to be a nice guy, but he's actually using his patients for his own ends. He's running this secret, evil scientific experiment studying the occult, and he wants to unlock the hell portal himself. He wants to explore it, he wants to study it, he wants to understand all its knowledge, and wants to gain the powers of hell. Imagine this Hellraiser versus Kellraiser. Yeah, it'd probably be a short movie. And This movie really explores the lore of Hellraiser. It goes into that insane, and we actually enter hell in this movie. There were fragments of that in the first movie, but a lot of it took place in the mortal world. Hell was coming to our world. Here we're going into hell itself, and that's what makes this movie so cool. If you're hoping, I'm putting it in We Have Such Sights to Show You, and I think it is better than the first one. This movie is so cool. It improves everything that was already great in movie 1 and does what a sequel should. It escalates the tension and raises the stakes. Hellraiser 2 is definitely an S-tier movie. We have such sights to show you. This movie is so visually stunning, so creepy, and so epic. I really like it. Pinhead is a lot more all over this movie as we learn of his origin. This is where we get to the big twist that while they're studying hell, we learn the Cenobites were once a man. Pinhead was once a man. The Cenobites were humans who got corrupted by the forces of hell. They indulged in sin, they used the box to gain that ultimate pleasure, but were reforged into demon minions serving Satan, aka the Leviathan, a giant box in the sky that looks like this dodecahedron dice. Better than the first? Kind of like how some consider The Godfather Part 2 better than Part 1. Yeah, I would say that. I think the second is much better because we actually explore hell and learn about the mythology. It's got this very Lovecraftian / Silent Hill feel. It's very trippy, a lot more psychological horror, and a lot more gross monsters that symbolically represent some deep theme. Dr. Channard gets into contact with the former villain, Julia Cotton. He gets the mattress she was killed on and uses a satanic ritual to bring her back to life. Julia comes back and she undergoes a very similar thing as Frank did, where she has to consume souls in order to grow her skin and become mortal again. And the doctor, having all these connections, basically sacrifices his patients to her. He brings in like a lot of innocent ladies, innocent patients he's supposed to be treating, and feeds them to her, where Julia becomes this sexy evil queen, kind of. Also, have you reviewed Mr. Crockett, or just too confusing? I don't even know what Mr. Crockett is, sorry. Julia was supposed to be the real villain of this franchise. Julia, undergoes a villain origin story in the first one, and they were actually hoping to make her the face of the franchise, but Pinhead was just much more popular and more interesting than her. Julia basically tries to become the Queen of Hell. She's rebuilding her power, and she wants to usurp Pinhead's place as leader. She's kind of a Starscream conspiring against him and using her connection to mortals. She's playing with Dr. Channard. She's seducing him, mating with him, but really luring him into a trap for her god, the Leviathan. It is Mr. Rogers' Neighbors if he was playing Freddy Krueger. Oh, I kind of thought that was the Mr. Grizzly Adventures to Tell Kids guy. Kirsty befriends this silent mute patient who's got this mental trauma. She basically it works that out by working on puzzles. She's constantly consumed by puzzles and very isolated, not reacting to the normal world, and Kirsty forms an odd friendship with this other patient. However, Dr. Channard uses this smart girl mute patient to unlock the puzzle box where they reopen the portal to hell, and this time all the characters get to venture inside of it. Something I find very interesting is that this isn't your typical hell with all the fire and brimstone and people screaming or set ablaze. No, apparently Hell is like the labyrinth, like the David Bowie movie. There's all these scary mazes and columns, very archaic architecture. It looks like this huge Greek maze and this scary labyrinth, and basically hell for these souls is putting you into like these weird, trippy Silent Hill chambers where you're mentally tortured by your traumatic past and your sins. There's all this nightmare imagery, like there's creepy visuals, like a clown is juggling his eyeballs. Kirsty revisits her old house, her old room, where it looks so peaceful at first, but then blood starts oozing from the walls and pictures change into the people who traumatized her from her loved ones. Her mother turns into Julia, who she hates, and everything falls apart. Your life, all your happiness is given and taken away in an instant. Really messed up stuff. Never gonna give you up. Yeah, Rickroll. I remember that. Kirsty naturally bumps into the Cenobites again, and this time we get a very strong hint that Pinhead is totally into Kirsty. He like wants to hit that. He definitely is into her. He has her at his mercy and basically decides, oh, but you should feel free to explore hell. We have all eternity to get to know each other. And he allows Kirsty to explore and find her friend, and Kirsty believes her dad is here, but I'm like, this is a really dumb plot twist because Larry was a good person, so obviously he would be in heaven. We find out she was kind of tricked. It was actually Frank all along. Larry's brother basically pretended to be him again to trick Kirsty into coming down and helping him escape one more time. But no, Frank is actually completely defanged as a villain this time. He's back in hell. He's in this area where there's a bunch of hot chicks, but he can't touch them because that's his punishment. They're hot chicks like in these beds. They look hot and sexy and they're nude, but every time he lifts the blanket, they disappear like they're ghosts. It's very creative. It's a creative hell, I will say. So he basically lured Kirsty down, so he wanted to have her and have her help him escape again because she opened the portal. But we find out he was being completely outmatched in the chess match by Julia, because Julia shows up because she and Chenard basically took Kirsty's friend with them into hell, and she betrays Frank, literally fatalitying him by ripping and breaking his heart, sending him back into the flames, where she fights Kirsty and she kind of takes over as the villain. So eventually, Kirsty manages to save her mute friend. Meanwhile, Julia lures Chenard to her god, but then, surprise, she betrays him too because only she can be queen. She was basically luring the doctor down to turn him into a Cenobite, and this is where we get the twist that Cenobites were once humans. She brought him down because he sought power, and this was her way of fulfilling her deal and giving it to him. Okay, bye. See ya, Kira. Nice to have you. Don't worry, you won't miss much. We got the good movies out of the way. Like, Chenard is turned into a Cenobite, and it is really cool. I love Chenard's Cenobite. He looks so awesome. He, like, steps out, has, like, these wires, like, sewn around his face, and he's got these weird stop-motion tentacle hands. They look cheesy, but I really dig them. They look so awesome. His tentacle hands, which could also turn into weapons and objects and creepy imagery. Let's just say the first Hellraiser film effects is a more practical version of the Mummy remake compared to its CGI effects of what the Mummy remake could have been. Yeah, Hellraiser 2 indulges in a lot of stop motion, but I actually think this makes the movie look better because it's so uncanny and unsettling and creepy. It does look a bit fake, but that's what kind of makes it also creepy and cool, because his powers are so unnatural. Chenard Cenobite, like, a lot of people hate him, mostly because he tries to act like Freddy. He's doing one-liners, but I just love them. The guy playing him had so much fun, and is a fun over-the-top. I love it. Like, I recommend amputation. He has like this weird voice because like a weird tentacle went into him. Oh, and I forgot to mention the Leviathan like directly plugs into him. He becomes his direct connection to their god. He gets like this penis worm connected to his head. And yeah, it looks very phallic. The psychosexual themes are definitely on the nose in this one. But it looks super gross and creepy, and he really had so much fun, even under all that makeup. I really like him. Channard Cenobite kind of takes over as the villain in this movie. Which unfortunately sucks for Julia. Julia was supposed to be the villain of this franchise, but this is where she meets her end anticlimactically. She's chasing Kirsty and the girl because they managed to get the Leviathan, the Lament configuration box back, which can close the portal to hell and stop it from spreading to our world. However, Julia chases them, and through a very weird fight scene, basically this wind tunnel is trying to suck them all down, and Julia tries to fight with the mute girl over the puzzle box, but then gets sucked in and she loses her skin, like getting sucked out of it somehow like a suit. Just like Night of the Demons. Yeah, kind of. Like, Julia gets sucked down like the hell toilet, and that's the last we ever see of her in this franchise. It's implied she was going to be back next movie, but that never happened, and they made Pinhead the star of the show. Speaking of which, they get the puzzle box back, they try to escape, but Pinhead and his gash ambush them. And Pinhead's finally done letting Kirsty get away and decides he wants her to be his. However, Kirsty finally reveals the twist that the Cenobites were all human. She shows like photos of Pinhead and the others back when they were mortal, and the Cenobites actually forgot that they were not demons. They were once human beings, and Kirsty says that you should help us because Leviathan is using you as slaves, basically. And this snaps the Cenobites basically out of their evil ways. Only we then get, just in time, the infamous divisive scene of the movie. The Cenobites turn good just when Channard Cenobite shows up, and he decides he wants the mute girl who solves puzzles back to be his apprentice. And he gets into a fight with the OG Cenobites, where the Cenobites get dwarfed. He punk kills them all easily, including Pinhead. He murders them all almost effortlessly. They tried to stop him with the old chain gag, but his claymation tentacles were just too strong, and he kills them all and slits Pinhead's throat, but not before turning them all back human. It's a pretty cool scene where the Cenobites die, they all turn back into human mortals without the makeup on. Yeah, I'd rather have the actor play Pinhead than that fifth Wrong Turn movie. Oh yeah, Doug Bradley showed up in a garbage Wrong Turn sequel instead of Hellraiser. Yeah, wasn't that a great choice? So yeah, they die and Pinhead's killed off until we resurrect him in the sequel. And Channard Cenobite takes over as the main villain, and this was kind of the problem people had because everybody loves Pinhead. He was the cool guy, and he actually undergoes great character development in this movie. But I just dig Channard Cenobite so much because he's just this larger-than-life, hammy, over-the-top villain, and he does get one of the most satisfying villain defeats in the series. So now, Kirsty and Mute Girl are on the run from Channard Cenobite. He eventually has this big epic fight with them on the top of the labyrinth. They're fighting over the box, which is still stuck in its trap form. They're trying to solve it. Then we get pretty much the scene that made Kirsty one of my favorite final girls. When Channard tries to convert the Mute Girl into his Cenobite apprentice, shove her in the same chamber he was trapped in. And Kirsty gets the brilliant idea to wear her dead stepmom's skin, Julia's skin, and disguise herself as Julia and pretend she's crawling back to him, and French kisses a Cenobite to distract him while the puzzle girl cracks the code and solves the puzzle box while he's too busy making out with her. And yeah, if you think Kirsty is not that great a final girl, she seduces and French kisses a Cenobite while wearing her abusive stepmom's skin. If that isn't awesome, I do not know what is. Kirsty is a great final girl. Hell, I'd rather have him play Pinhead than the third installment of the Pumpkinhead movie. Oh yeah, that's another people want us to watch. Might do it with Emily Alucard if she's around. And we get the epic fight. They solve the puzzle. They crack the code. Channard's Cenobite chases them and realizes he's been played and tries to kill them one last time, but he accidentally hooks his tentacles on a collapsing platform that's shifting away from him. And in the gnarliest kill, it rips Channard's Cenobite's head off because he's attached to the Leviathan plug, and it completely decapitates him. His body falls down the abyss and his head rips off and goes flying elsewhere. And Kirsty manages to save Puzzle Girl. They make a run for it. They solve the puzzle box and they escape hell together, finally closing the portal, and Kirsty and Puzzle Girl get their happy ending, walking away from the asylum with a newfound appreciation for life. And then we get our twist ending. Basically, the asylum... I'm sorry, I can't speak. The asylum is being closed down and there's some U-Haul guys repossessing everything. However, one of them accidentally checks out Julia's mattress and touches the blood, where he gets grabbed by a demon and dragged in, where this weird Cenobite obelisk rises. And it has the homeless guy's face attached to it, asking the one surviving mover, "What is your pleasure, sir?" implying it's not over yet and there'll be a third sequel. Very trippy, but I think Hellraiser 2 is awesome. It is so much better than the first. I think this is the crazy fun, dark, gothic horror movie everybody expects out of the Hellraiser franchise. I highly recommend it. The first two are legends, and number 2 was definitely a satisfying follow-up. So, unfortunately, we get to the divisive era, where you either love or hate these sequels before we get to the just plain hate dog shit. Next is Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. And I'm putting it on a waste of good suffering. The third movie is the first one I actually hated, and I think it is the one that pretty much started the franchise's downward spiral. In this one, this is where they resurrect Pinhead, and he comes back and starts the apocalypse on Earth. However, it's under a budget much lower than an average Goosebumps episode. Ever want to do a Puppet Master tier list? I might, but there's like 30 films. I don't think I can watch them all, and it doesn't help that the later half of them also suck. My friend Emily wanted me to talk about Puppet Master, but I don't know. I'm just afraid to start it because there is so overwhelming watching 20 films. I have to dedicate so much time to watching them all. Yeah, Hellraiser 3 is a waste of good suffering. There are neat ideas in this one, really cool kills, and definitely Pinhead is awesome in this movie. Doug Bradley is pretty much the highlight in all of these, including the garbage ones. But yeah, it is definitely a weak movie. In this one, this is where basically they try to resurrect Pinhead. Some guy buys the obelisk shown at the end of the second movie and uses the obelisk as a decoration for his goth nightclub. However, during this time, he cuts his finger and bleeds on it, which brings out Pinhead, and he's kind of turns into Queen Banshira's statue form from Power Rangers. If you know, you know. He's like fused to the rock. He's like part statue, part of this obelisk, and he's like his face is like shown sticking out of it, kind of Queen Bansheera style. Pinhead is alive in here, and he promises the nightclub manager that if he releases him, he will give him ultimate power and help his dreams come true. And the nightclub manager, I guess, is okay with this because he's eventually won over and decides, alright, I'll let this, instead of, making a ton of money having this thing, like, shown in a museum or something. So yeah, the nightclub manager basically does the same thing, sacrifices people and feeds them to Pinhead, where he eats them and he's slowly growing more body parts and freeing himself from the obelisk statue. However, our main protagonist, the final girl, is Jadzia Dax, also from Star Trek. She plays this go-getter reporter girl who's basically trying to report on this nightclub and realizes that the guy is doing some shady things. Terry Farrell, I think is her name. She's a good actress, but I feel really sorry because her talents feel wasted in this pile of crap. Basically, she's trying to crack the case and solving the mystery and relearning all that Hellraiser lore, basically. They do subvert your expectations, because halfway through, one of the hookers, like the nightclub manager, brings back to feed Pinhead. Like, she basically one-ups him and knocks him out and feeds him to Pinhead, but then Pinhead makes a bargain with her, and she becomes his new second-in-command. And yeah, he like promises her freedom. You won't ever be used and abused again, even though I just tried to kill you myself. And basically she helps fulfill Pinhead's prophecy of feeding people to him so he can be released from hell again. And so she eventually does so and brings him out, and he becomes the king of hell. So, Pinhead eventually gets released from his obelisk and decides to bring the apocalypse. He brings hell on earth. It's the title. While this is going on, the final girl, Jadzia Dax, is like studying him, and this is where we learn a little more about Pinhead's origin. We actually see what he was like as a human, and Pinhead's ghost sort of talks to her through like dreams. She has like these Silent Hill dreams where she's back in World War I. We find out Pinhead was this soldier. He used to be a good, noble man, and this is implied to be the last essence of good and conscious Pinhead had before being corrupted by hell. Like, she's in, like, these Silent Hill dreams talking to human Pinhead, and it's supposed to be a twist that this is supposed to be Pinhead in life, but when it's Doug Bradley, it's very easy to tell, and the second movie kind of told us this. But whatever. Basically, she works with him and is slowly putting the mystery together, and this is the infamous part of this movie. Pinhead goes on a slasher killing spree on Earth. He goes into the nightclub and kills all the goths and party dancers at a rave, and it is like a total Freddy Krueger / Jason type of scene. He breaks into the dance floor and starts using his hell powers and hell magic to basically kill and skewer all of them, and convert some of the characters we met earlier into Cenobites. Like, it is so out of character for Pinhead, and basically the defenders of this film try to justify it that, oh, actually, this guy is not fully Pinhead, it's all Pinhead's evil in his body. Which I have a very hard time buying, and it really doesn't make sense. This movie is a real mess of a plot, and it does not do well with the hell lore as much as people think. I know some people like it because it tries to go for that epic atmosphere that the second movie did. However, the second movie had a lot more magic and mystical concepts to it. This is pretty much a take over the world type of plot, and Pinhead I do not think is as scary as he usually is in this movie. Doug Bradley basically becomes a slasher by this point, going around killing people. Here's Johnny Cage. or Queen of the Damned or Fright Night, if you will. Are there enough Fright Night movies? I don't think so. With the nightclub scene, yeah, it's pretty stupid too, because Pinhead actually kills somebody by impaling them on an ice sculpture. It's like, on an ice sculpture. That is dumb, but even dumber are the characters that solidified this as awful to me. The comic relief Cenobites. Yes, you heard that right. Comic relief Cenobites. This is where the Cenobites get funny, goofy gimmicks and cheesy one-liners. And some of the worst Cenobites are in this movie. We meet Cameraman, it's basically Jadzia Dax's reporter buddy, the camera operator, who gets the camera fused with his head, and he's cracking action lines and movie quotes as he kills people. We get CD Face, a guy the DJ who gets CDs into his skin, and he throws CDs like ninja stars, killing people and skewering them, which, no, CDs are not strong enough to do that. He's throwing CD shurikens and has a whole bunch of, like, a CD player spitting them out of his face. And, of course, Barbecue, who was like the cook at the place. He's got like barbed wire around him and he burps fire. Yeah, he burps fire. Because isn't that what you expected out of a Hellraiser movie? They're comic relief Cenobites, and they're killing people in these goofy-ass gimmicky ways. They're like shooting cops with their barbecue burps and Ninja Star CDs. It is so stupid. Remember when Scoobert Doo faced off against the creatures named Night Fright? Yeah, I remember. The Vincent Van Gogh episode. And I hated these comic relief Cenobites. The cameraman is like punching a hole in one of them with his camera lens. It's like going forward and back, and he's like, how's that for a close-up? It's so cringe, man. It is bad. It's like, you thought Channard's Cenobites sucked? It's like, listen to these guys. They like destroy the police force trying to stop them, and he goes, that's a wrap. And cringe. It is maximum cringe. Barbecue burps. More like barfecue. Yeah, it is bad. These comic relief Cenobites go on a rampage, and they're so terrible and cringy that they make the monsters from Scooby-Doo 2 look more threatening. Eventually, Jadzia Dax solves the mystery, and she confronts Pinhead. Apparently, her best friend got turned into a Cenobite off-screen. They have this fight in a construction site, and good Pinhead shows up, the colonel guy he used to be, and the ghost who reveals he's real, and he converges with Pinhead, and they become whole again. I'm not sure how that works or what that means for the story. It's never touched upon. And basically, Jadzia Dax solves the mystery and defeats Pinhead and sends the Cenobites back to hell. Until next movie. And yeah, she gets her story, or whatever. It's bad. Hellraiser 3 is bad. I think this is where the franchise really slipped downhill, and unfortunately, it never went back up. Alright, give me a second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back, and we're right on the last one that was released in theaters, Hellraiser 4 Bloodlines, aka Hellraiser in Space. That's right, this is the one where they go to space. Basically, there's a new group in the future who are trying to solve the lament configuration, and this one is sort of an anthology film. We get like these different chronological chapters of the lament configuration, and we finally learn of its creation. Have you and Wolf seen the new trailer for the new Goosebumps movie, Goosebumps The Vanishing, involves Stay Out of the Basement? Isn't that the Disney Plus show? I remember Stay Out of the Basement was quoted in the Disney Plus season. It's the second season of the Disney Plus show. And no, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to review it. I have zero interest in watching Disney's streaming show, and we do not own Disney Plus because their prices are too jacked. We got Jason in space, Leprechaun in space, Hellraiser in space. Now we need Saw in space. Or, Chucky. Yeah, this is the one where they go to space, and this one's a bit all over the place. It is definitely a huge improvement over Hellraiser 3, but there are parts I liked in it. We actually get like the origin of the Hellraiser box and learn more about Pinhead, who the Lament family are, and Pinhead's obsession with the box and why he's doing what he does. One thing I hate is that Pinhead is a full-on villain in this movie. This is the one where Pinhead is now completely irredeemably evil. He's not the chaotic neutral he once was. He's not reasonable. Now he is a full-time villain, and he wants to do hell's work, which is basically taking over the world. Of course. Yes, about as jacked as trying to get an Oculus Rift headset, yeah. Those are expensive, man. So basically, we find out about the Lament family. They invented the box, and Pinhead is like low-key stalking their family. We meet a cool new Cenobite, at least, Angelique, who is the daughter of Satan, the princess of hell, and she basically has this rivalry with Pinhead, where they're both trying to do hell's bidding. Angelique appears in multiple segments because in this we get time jumps. We see how Pinhead and the Cenobites operated in different times. We see old medieval times, like in the French Revolution. We see cowboy times. We see our present day. And, of course, we get the future, where it's in space. Like, Pinhead basically wants the entire Lament bloodline, hence the title. He's, like, stalking their family in different centuries, and they're outsmarting him, beating him, or delaying his invasion of hell. And we're in space because the recent future relative has finally figured out how to beat Pinhead. Pinhead attacks with Angelique, who becomes this weird Cenobite nun, and one of the sadder deaths is we meet the two security guards who are bumbling twins that get turned into a two-headed Cenobite. They look really weird, but a very gruesome and creative kill, though. And unfortunately, the stupid Cenobite dog, which is just a Resident Evil dog, didn't really like that thing much. But yeah, they're in space, and Pinhead basically tracks the last relative down to finally fight him and end the bloodline, but haha, it was a trap, because the space station is actually, are you ready for this? A giant cube. It transforms into a giant Lament configuration because the space station is a transformer. It turns into a giant box in space to capture the Cenobites. And this traps Pinhead once and for all, and they basically blow it up, killing him and ending his threat once for good. It's kind of dumb and really out there, and directed to you by Alan Smithy, which should tell you how much faith they had in this movie. I didn't think it was too bad. The space aspect was really weird and out there, but it definitely did new things with the Hellraiser saga, which is why I like it. Reminds me of Unicron. This one, I might actually put in demons to some, angels to others. I thought it was okay. It wasn't the best, and it honestly wasn't as terrible, but it does have its ridiculousness and really confusing plot points. Sorry, I just needed some water. The Mortis trilogy from Clone Wars was better. Yeah, the Mortis trilogy was so cool, but as it's gone on over time and seeing what Dave Filoni has done with it, I no longer cherish it as I did as a kitten. Like, the Mortis trilogy kind of retroactively became bad because of what it was attached to later. Just like Hellraiser. Hellraiser 4, I think, is okay. This is one of the more passable movies, but I do not think everyone loves it. It does have a cult following, but it does not rank super high into legendary territory. So finally, we're at the downward spiral, the direct-to-video crap. All the direct-to-video Hellraisers, which is Inferno, Hellseeker, Deader, Hellworld, Revelations, and Judgment. And the reboot is the one that finally came back to theaters. So we're in for a lot of crap, people. Next is Hellraiser Inferno, which is tear your soul apart. This one is awful. And for one huge reason, it has the worst protagonist in the series. Just like the Land Before Time franchise as a whole, yeah, it's one of those franchises that went on too long, and Hellraiser honestly should have stopped long ago, but they kept it going because, you know, Pinhead made money. And despite the theatrical movies like 3 and 4 being bombs, there were still a fan base paying to see it. Hellraiser Inferno is terrible. The main protagonist is one of the most unlikable douches who makes Sentinel Prime look like a saint in comparison. Basically, we follow this really awful guy. He commits every sin in the book. He's a jerk. He's lazy. He's a corrupt cop. He cheats on his wife. He's taking, like, bribes, doing shady stuff in the background, and very much rude and condescending towards everyone. He is a total villain protagonist. Similar thing with The Walking Dead. They kept it going for 11 seasons. Yeah, that was bad. It went downhill after the Savior War ended. Like, basically, this corrupt detective is trying to crack this mystery. He's hunting, like, a serial killer, allegedly connected to, like, Satanism, and that's supposed to let Pinhead in the way, but along the way, some weird trippy Silent Hill style stuff is happening. He's like seeing demons, he's seeing ghosts from his past, and very bizarre stuff, like these goth lesbian demons who keep making out, and these Asian ghost cowboys who show up out of nowhere and beat him up. It's like they were kind of pulling weird stuff out of nowhere, and unfortunately, this is the biggest problem with a lot of these direct-to-video things. This was a completely separate, individual, standalone horror movie, like someone's Silent Hill fanfiction, and they just slapped the Hellraiser brand name on it. That's all. It is clearly a solo project that someone was trying to make. Someone wanted to make their own horror flick, and they made it under the Hellraiser brand because that's the only way people would buy it. It would sell better if Pinhead's face was on the cover. At this point, Pinhead barely does much in this franchise. Pinhead shows up as a twist villain for at least half of these movies. Pinhead is like appearing in cameos, showing up in hallucinations, and it's very obvious that Pinhead's scenes were shot without like the original movie's production in mind because he doesn't interact with the main character until the final act. Who do you think would win, Ash Williams or Pinhead from the original Hellraiser? I might go with Pinhead. He would at least trap Ash, that's for sure. Ash would have a hard time getting all those hooks out. So yeah, some weird random stuff occurs. It is pretty much someone's Silent Hill fan fiction because the demons are supposed to represent his sins and he's having hallucinations. And it is so disconnected with the rest of the franchise. And we get to like the very obvious twist. Oh, also sad is James Remar is in this movie, and he plays this cryptic psychologist who's helping the jerk detective get over his BS. I don't know why. It's like you just don't like the main character. They have like hallucinations of his kid self before he was abused and corrupted into becoming evil to make you feel for him that he was nice once. He was once a sweet, innocent boy, but that doesn't justify the total douchebag he is now. And we don't get an explanation for everything he's done. And basically we get to the twist. He like confronts the killer and he sees the killer was actually him. And Pinhead shows up to explain that none of this is real. He died and is in hell all along. And this is a twist that will be stuck on repeat for a lot of these movies. The sins from Helva Boss and Full Metal Alchemist was better represented. Yeah, that's for sure. The sins in this movie are not. They are very cheap. This movie has a very cheap production, and overall, Inferno is bad because it's just unpleasant. When it's not about bloody murder and terrible things, it's basically about this sinner getting his comeuppance and paying for his sins. He's in hell, and the twist is he was dead all along. Pinhead was basically extending his torture and mentally toying with him as punishment for what he did in life. And all these are like reminders of what a bad person he is, and he has to suffer the same fate in like a Groundhog Day loop. Like in the twist, the detective wakes up and now he realizes he's reliving the same horrible day in this movie all over and over again. And yeah, it is terrible. It is bad. I don't recommend Inferno. It is one of the worst movies in the series and pretty much the biggest sign that this franchise completely lost its way. Also, barely any Pinhead. So, next is Hellseeker. This one, I think, is a better version of Inferno. I will put it on... I want to put it on Demons to Some, Angels to Others, but I might put it on A Waste of Good Suffering. Hellseeker... No, hey, goodbye for about 15 minutes. Okay, see you later. So, I will put Hellseeker on A Waste of Good Suffering because there was hope for this movie. This is the only direct sequel which finally brings Kirsty back, only to kill her off in the first 5 minutes, where she dies and disappears for most of the movie, while her boring husband takes over as the real protagonist. Yeah, that is pretty much why it lost points. This actually does have an interesting story. Kirsty's husband is kind of the main character, and through flashbacks we see Ashley Lawrence interact with him, and she gets more screen time at least. Basically, the husband is grieving and sad about his wife, but then uncovers this mystery as demons from hell start working their way towards him. This is kind of exactly like Inferno. He's uncovering a mystery and a lot of weird supernatural things are happening to him, and we slowly learn there's more to this than meets the eye. However, it's better than Inferno because there's actually an attempt to fool you. Like, we're led to believe the husband was a nice guy, but then we get these very strong hints that he's done some immoral things and is not as pure as we think. Like what they did for Paxton for Hostel, yeah. Kirsty dies, but don't worry, it's not as bad as Resurrection, let's just say that. Basically, there's more to this. Kirsty isn't out of the movie, but she is definitely sidelined in this, and that's why a lot of people hate Hellseeker, because we're following her dumbass husband for most of it. We get these clues and hints, he's uncovering some stuff going on, realizing that there's the lament configuration, some monsters pop up, jump scares, and he's kind of like a suspect because they believe he did something and he killed someone. and we're led to believe it might have been Kirsty, but no, he killed someone else. And random characters show off. Oh, and killing him off in the sequel. Yeah, The Hitcher 2 did that also with the hero and the police sheriff everyone loved. So weird things are happening, some very bad effects. I will say I do like Pinhead in this movie because he's back to his old cryptic, mysterious self this time. He shows up in like reflections, like in puddles and glass, and he's basically taunting the husband about how he has no idea what's going on and dropping hints to him. Eventually, we find out in the twist after the husband is like confronting everything and he comes face to face with Pinhead, we find out Kirsty's actually alive. The husband was actually a douchebag this whole time who was planning to have his wife killed so he can inherit her millions. Cause I guess Kirsty's a millionaire after Frank Cotton and Larry Cotton both died. Like, the surprise, the husband was actually a twist villain protagonist, and he's in hell all along. Apparently, he tried to assassinate Kirsty, and he paid a guy to, like, stalk her and do it, set all these things up. However, Kirsty outgambited him because she sold her abusive husband soul to Pinhead, and basically gave Pinhead sacrifices, the sacrifices being all the people and criminals the husband conspired with to kill her. I feel like Hostel needs a remake. What do you think, Kat? No, I'm not a fan of Hostel. I think it's really gross. I think Saw is definitely a better version of it. So basically, yeah, she actually sold her husband's soul, and all the people he was talking to are also dead and sacrificed in hell. Pinhead was apparently killing them and toying with him the whole time, framing him. Like, he killed his douchey best friend, he killed the guy he hired to stalk Kirsty, he killed, like, the collector who sold the lament configuration, and he killed all the women that he was cheating on Kirsty with. Basically, Kirsty outgambited him, and she's actually alive and gets to live again, but now she's kind of bound to Pinhead after this, and the abusive husband dies, getting chained and dragged to hell. And Kirsty, like we find out in the twist ending, Kirsty actually survived the car crash, and the husband was the one who actually died. I'm not sure how a lot of this works, if it's in their mind or if they were magic to hell or whatever. But yeah, the movie kind of gave up for this twist. And she gets her claws back, like the police give her back the lament configuration, and it's a sign that Kirsty and Pinhead are kind of bound together forever in eternity, and this will always haunt her and follow her. And that's the last we ever see of Kirsty in this franchise. Yeah, this one had a good idea, but I think was a bit weak. And some people felt that Kirsty was kind of character assassinated in this movie, which I can understand, but Kirsty has done some underhanded things in the first two movies too. It's like, yeah, I know, she's not a noble hero, but the first movie never really said she was either. Sorry, I needed water. The worst things about this movie is that we don't get as much Kirsty screen time as we should have. She is a secondary character in what should have been her return to form. They really wasted Ashley Lawrence, but I will say she does look pretty hot in this movie. Ashley Lawrence looks real pretty. Yeah, it's a decent movie, but very below average. Not something you would rush out to see, but I would say if you are interested, this is one of the better direct-to-video movies. So, unlike our next movie, Hellraiser Deader, who I think will tear your soul apart. Hellraiser Deader basically follows Maria Hill, who's a reporter uncovering a cult which worship the Cenobites. And it suffers the exact same problem as Inferno. This is clearly a different horror movie with the Hellraiser brand slapped onto it. Because they know no one else would watch this movie or pay to see it if we didn't know Pinhead and the Cenobites were attached to it. Like, Hellraiser Deader had an interesting idea. It's another Silent Hill style fan fiction. However, it is also terrible. The main character, Maria Hill, not Colby Smulders, the good one from Earth's Mightiest Heroes, is our protagonist. And she plays this very annoying girl boss character who she's obnoxious, she's in your face, I'm a strong, independent woman, even though she's crying and getting endangered half the time. She is really annoying. I did not like her. The only difference is she had a sympathetic side to her because she was at least more sympathetic than the Inferno protagonist was. She's basically uncovering a cult and learning more about what they worship, like what's going on, their sacrifices, and some trippy Silent Hill hallucinations happen all the time. The worst part of this movie is there are so many fake out dreams, so many jump scares, and so many misleading hallucinations where the movie is basically mind screwing you. It's tricking you into thinking we're getting plot progression, only nothing actually happened. It was all the protagonist experiencing magic or in her mind. And it gets old real fast. Basically, half the movie does not make sense. It is very clunky. It is messy. It is all over the place. I do like Joey the cultist because he's so snarky and funny. He was at least mildly entertaining, but unfortunately, we're stuck with Maria Hill, who's in constant bitch face mode, and she is not likable. And make matters worse, it's another movie where Pinhead and the Cenobites don't show up until the last 10 minutes. Why? Because this was obviously a completely different movie until they awkwardly turned it into a Hellraiser movie in the end. Yeah, it's basically turned into a Hellraiser movie by the end, and basically Pinhead shows up and for no reason explained that well at all, he kills all the cultists and decides not to convert them into Cenobites. And basically, this was about him being released from hell, which, spoilers, this isn't going to go anywhere in the follow-up. Yeah, Pinhead kills all the cultists, and we find out that, oh, Maria Hill was also dead all along. She was a sacrifice who broke free, and I guess she goes to heaven because she rejected hell, and she kills herself by ending Pinhead's escape from hell somehow. It's not explained very well, but apparently her sacrificing herself nulled the satanic ritual. Which you prefer, this Hellraiser film or American Pie Girls Rule? Oh, I think I might prefer this movie because there is one positive: we get to see Maria Hill's boobs. There's a lot of nudity in this movie, and that is a positive. Girls Rule didn't have the ovaries to show any nude scenes. No naked women and no naked guys for the ladies. Deader at least did show us that. There's a lot of nudity, nude extras, orgies, and we get to see Maria Hill's boobs, which I will say is definitely a plus over Inferno. But yeah, Deader's another one you can skip. Oh man, I'm gonna need more water because we're getting to the next one, the infamous Hell World. Alright, I'm back. Evil goes online. Hellraiser Hellworld, if you don't know, is the one where hell becomes a video game. And Pinhead uses the lament configuration to convert into a video game online to lure in idiots to sign their souls away to hell. And it is as dumb as you think. About as much as The Witcher meets The Boys meets Spartacus, in the sense of nudity. Oh, and sprinkle of Game of Thrones in there for good measure. Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna disagree. Hellworld is friggin' rock bottom. Or no, I think it's better than Inferno. Yeah, Hellraiser Hellworld is one of the worst horror sequels, not just in the series, but ever. It is a bad horror sequel. It is where the franchise completely gave up, started pandering to the young kids today, started doing stuff that was so not Hellraiser, and really indulging in the stupid teen drama. The stupid teen drama, a lot of sex comedy, a lot of awful, awful CGI in this one. Have you heard of X vs. Sever? No, I have not. And this was the one so bad that this was the last ever one where Doug Bradley played Pinhead. He is not in the rest of these from this point onward. And for good reason. This one's really stupid. We follow a group of stupid kids who get invited to a video game party because they won a Hellraiser game competition, where they're invited to Lance Henriksen's haunted house for this epic rave/orgy party where they all have fun. However, it turns out the house is haunted by the Cenobites, and really it's actually Lance Henriksen and Pinhead working together to get revenge on his dead son. That movie is up there with The Room. Some say it's worse than The Room. Okay. I would say Hellworld is definitely The Room of this franchise too. And this one makes no sense. There is a very confusing twist at the end where we find out, like, all the kids are stupid idiots. They're wandering around the mansion, getting into wacky hijinks, and the Cenobites show up and kill them one by one. There's this really dumbass scene where some bimbo sits in a torture chair, and surprise, she gets trapped in it and tortured. Yeah, who didn't see that coming? Henry Cavill is in this, and Carrie Payton is in this before they got famous. They appear as stupid idiot douche bros in the movie who get killed by Cenobites also. And Pinhead sort of becomes more like Jason Voorhees. He's just going around slashing and killing people. He's like, it's very random. Pinhead appears very sporadically in this movie. It is very inconsistent, and for the most part, Lance Henriksen is the real villain in this movie, because he's the one pulling all the strings and the one with the motive. We find out Lance Henriksen is actually the father of a kid who committed suicide over this video game. And he invited all the kids here to get revenge on them for allowing his son to die. It's like, wait, wouldn't you blame the creators of the video game for doing that? Or, heck, how did you get access to the game if you were able to hack it and have this party message for all the gamers to show up so you could kill them? How would you know these people even play the video game? It's like such a huge leaps of logic all over this film, and so contrived. One of the girls actually karate kicks Lance Henriksen off a balcony, and it's such a cringy action scene. Game Over from the Haunting Hour is better than this film. Yeah, it is. This also doesn't even have much to do with the internet. It advertises like Pinhead is going to start reaching people online, but no, the video game aspect is just a plot point. It's used to summon people here, and Pinhead is like helping him because in exchange he's getting all these gamer souls because they solved the box through the game screen. Well, at least more tolerable-ish. And they fight Lance Henriksen, fight Pinhead, and just in the ultimate WTF moment, we find out none of it was real. They've all actually been drugged and hallucinating this entire movie, as they were actually buried alive, submerged in coffins underground outside of the mansion. Lance Henriksen apparently roofied all the kids and buried them in coffins and was slowly, like, cutting off their oxygen by burying them underground. And Lance Henriksen runs away, but then the police show up because the ghost of their dead best friend showed up to call the cops on his own dad. And yeah, this did not care. Did Wolf look at Pushing Up Roses' review of the Haunting Hour Game Over? No, he didn't. He's not even gonna bother. So yeah, basically the ghost of their dead friend saved them by calling the cops on his own dad. It is so stupid and out of nowhere, not foreshadowed at all, and really pathetic attempt to be deep as if he forgave them for their sins, when really it is not their fault at all that he killed himself over a garbage Flash game. Lance Henriksen runs away, he thinks he's gotten away, but till we get our twist ending, where Pinhead shows up because he had the real configuration box on him somehow, and he kills Lance Henriksen with awful CGI. Basically getting his comeuppance, and he gets his soul instead of the kid's, since he failed on his mission. If he does, he will be pissed at what she thought of that episode. Essentially, it's the same way she felt about Goosebumps Attack of the Mutants. She hated it. Okay. I won't blame her for her opinion. But yeah, Hellworld is garbage. It is awful. I will put it above Inferno because there's also better nudity in this movie. And some people do see it as so bad it's good. I know my friend Emily Alucard really liked it. She dug it for that very aspect, but to me, no, it is garbage. It is the rock bottom of this show, along with Inferno. So we get to Hellraiser Revelations, which is also will tear your soul apart. It is another garbage movie. This one was basically pumped out at the last second by the studio because they didn't want to lose the copyrights for the Hellraiser name. And you can tell this was hastily slapped together and just farted out at the last second. Because basically, it's another horror movie where Pinhead's barely a part of it. This was the movie so bad, Doug Bradley refused to come back as his horror icon to star in it. So as a result, Pinhead is completely sidelined, completely in the shadows, and now played by Fred Tatasciore because he was cheaper. Question, why do I love bad movies so much? Just like how Dead Meat likes bad horror movies, there's definitely, like, a charm to how cheesy and goofy they are. They're just dumb fun, they make you laugh, they entertain you, you quote the over-the-top stuff, you find a sense of fun in them, you like what you like, basically. Some people like stuff, some people hate stuff, we all have our own opinions, and we gravitate to something that we do find amusement or joy in. And, including me, I do like bad stuff a lot, too. I just haven't gotten around to telling you all yet, because I'm talking about the good stuff for the most part. I mean, I like Batman Forever and Epic movie, and everybody hates those. I thought they were pretty enjoyable and dumb fun. It just makes me laugh. But meanwhile, back to something that doesn't make me laugh, Hellraiser Revelation. This one is pretty much terrible. It is everything you'd expect from a garbage direct-to-video horror movie. Terrible main characters, unlikable protagonists, predictable jump scares, cheap shock value, a very piss-poor story arc, and absolutely no thought. It was a total cash grab. A cash grab that was made by nobody who actually liked it. My dad likes Val Kilmer. He probably likes Batman Forever. Val Kilmer is an underrated Batman. Out of the Tear Your Soul Apart, which I would choose those or Troll 2 film. Do I even need to answer that question? Obviously, for me, it's Troll 2. So, Revelation, we follow two annoying douche bros who go to Mexico to get laid, only to stumble upon on their quest for ultimate pleasure the puzzle box, the lament configuration. They get it from a random homeless guy who I'm certain is supposed to be the homeless guy from the first movie to tie it all together, but yeah, it's stupid. They get it from the homeless guy and unlock Pinhead, where Pinhead basically kills one of the douche bros, but he spares the other one if he can get him more souls. And for the most part, we're following their families in the aftermath who are basically grieving and scared and reacting to all this horror because both their sons have went missing. They haven't been declared dead. He's also an underrated actor overall. Yeah, I agree. It's too bad he starred in The Snowman and he suffered that stroke. Val Kilmer used to be such a great talent. So yeah, the douche bros, one of them dies. They become a new Cenobite, basically, while one of them gets away, but in exchange for his life, he must give Pinhead some souls in exchange as payment. And he returns to the grieving families, basically. The grieving families are both, very close. They're family friends through the two guys. And they're, having a dinner together, trying to comfort each other, be there for their missing sons, until one of the sons turns up, and they're asking questions, trying to crack the mystery of where he's been, and he's, in total shock or being silent. And basically, it's a lot of angsting, a lot of whining, a lot of cheap jump scares. Some weird things happen, and because the guy promised Pinhead the souls, he's gonna give them his family's souls, basically, and he summons hell by placing a hell portal around them where some supernatural things are happening to this house, and one of the worst things is we completely stay in this entire friggin' mansion. It gets so boring because the mansion is so plain and so modern that you don't feel scared. There's no atmosphere. There's no gothic tension. There's no themes. They're basically stuck in a generic haunted house while hell forces jump scare and pop up on the sides. And there's this very unsettling, gross scene where one of the douche bros, makes out with his sister. She's, confronting him, and there's, this weird tension, and then he and his sister kiss, and weirdly, the sister is, into it. It is, what the heck am I even watching? It is gross, uncomfortable, and totally squicky. She kisses him, then he, leaves, and basically, the sister apparently makes nothing of it because it's never brought up ever again for the rest of the movie. It's just weird. Then we get to the twist ending. This douche bro is actually the other douche bro who, is Nico or something. He's the other douche bro. He just betrayed his best friend and wore his skin to come home and fool everyone. Which, yeah, is an allusion to Frank Cotton wearing his brother's skin, but here it makes no sense because, who is he trying to fool? He could have came back as his normal skin self, and it would have played out exactly the same. The mansion from Abigail was better. Never saw Abigail, so I can't judge, but I'll assume you're right, because here it just looks like your average modern home they're trapped in. Yeah, it turned out this is the other douche bro, which makes even less sense because his bro, who was turned into a Cenobite, has the same actor's face as him. And yeah, very confusing there. Yeah, he reveals he betrayed everyone and sold them off to hell so he could get his freedom back. The sister basically fights him. I think she escapes. I also barely remember this movie. I think she escapes, but the parents aren't so lucky. And basically, everyone's banished to hell, basically. Very terrible, very by the numbers, very disturbing, but in the wrong ways kind of disturbing. Revelation is definitely a cheap cash grab that was only made so the company could own Hellraiser still. Do not recommend at all. It is rock bottom along with Hellworld and Inferno. So we get Hellraiser Judgment, which I might put on demons to some, angels to others. Judgment is not that great a movie, however, it is a huge step in the right direction. Judgment finally brings Pinhead back in the spotlight, and they got a guy who's better at playing him, better than the guy in Revelations, who is trying to mimic Doug Bradley. He does a pretty decent job. In Judgment, we follow another crime scene, which is basically a ripoff of Seven. A detective is trying to catch this evil religious killer, killing people in a similar fashion as the Ten Commandments. Yeah, instead of the Seven Deadly Sins, because that makes it less of a ripoff. And basically, we meet a lot of fan favorite Cenobites. There's this Cenobite accountant who's like keeping track of all the business that goes in hell. A lot of people really like this guy. I do have fun with him, but I do think it's weird because I miss the gothic Cenobites. I miss when they were kind of like these spiritual entities, but there's this guy who's basically a hell of a boss character in there. He's like keeping track of like all the hell business, all the souls, all the accounting, and basically like this is the first Hellraiser where they finally address heaven. We finally see like heaven actually does exist in this universe, and the Cenobites are making business cooperations with the angels, albeit reluctantly. We actually see an angel come down helping Pinhead manage business and talking about what God wants. This movie has a lot of gross scenes. There's these very disturbing, but like not in the body horror type of sense, very weird scene, like people undressing skin as if it were clothes, and a lot of fat, sweaty guys and middle-aged nudity. Very, very bizarre and peculiar. Some people, I do not recommend watching this franchise while you're eating, because Judgment is definitely one of the grosser movies. However, the angels soon get involved when we find out that this serial killer was not supposed to go to hell or be taken by Pinhead, because I guess him killing people was a part of God's plan or something. But Pinhead says, screw that, it's his judgment to call, and a lot of courtroom kind of drama, basically. It was definitely a cheap production, but it looked better than Revelations, which is why some fans give it credit. Pinhead wants to take the serial killer down to hell. The angel says no. Then Pinhead decides to kill the angel, which he kills the angel and takes her soul down to hell, which pisses off God. And after 9 movies straight, Pinhead finally gets his punishment, where God takes away Pinhead's powers and makes him a human again, where he's sent to live among the homeless and is back in life, now no longer in command of hell forces. And this is pretty much why it won points, because after this entire long franchise, long journey, lots of crap, Pinhead finally gets his comeuppance and is completely depowered, forced to banish and live among the living, which he hates, and he's no longer the scary villain he once was anymore. So, I thought it was okay. It definitely needs improvement. There were a lot of scars, a lot of stuff that could have been fixed and patched, but Judgment, I think, definitely made a lot of fixes for the screw-ups that this franchise suffered. There was a decent attempt. This one actually does care about the Hellraiser lore. Somebody was actually passionate about this movie, and we finally get more solid conclusion to Pinhead, which is definitely great. And when you consider all these movies keep trying to keep the franchise running forever, so giving the main timeline Pinhead a proper conclusion was definitely satisfying. So I will show it mercy and put it on the okay spectrum. Kind of like the undressing of the werewolves from Trick or Treat. Yeah, kind of like that. Except they can't put their skin back on in Hellraiser. Alright, I'm gonna use the bathroom one last time, and then we'll end things with the reboot. What is it you pray for? Alright, finally on the last one, which is ironically the newest one, Hellraiser, the 2022 one, I believe. This is after the original Hellraiser saga kind of wore out its welcome. They hit the whole reset button and rebooted the entire franchise with a completely new Pinhead and a new cast. The Hellraiser reboot, I don't think is a horror classic. Everybody really loved it. Everybody, praised it. There were some criticisms and, of course, some stupid activism that went along with all of its promotional material. I do not get why people see Hellraiser as an LGBT classic horror saga. It's like, this is about, Christianity and Satanism, mostly. But I thought it was okay. Hellraiser is a huge return to form. It got a lot of love and praise because it was miles better than all the crap we've seen for the last 15 years. Yeah, insert JonTron. How could you do this to me bit here? It's bad, and not just because Pinhead is now female. Oh, you thought it was bad. Okay. Yeah, there are problems with it, which is why I don't rank it in the... it's not spoilers, it's not going S tier, that's for sure. I do think it does have its problems, but there were some stuff I liked, namely because this was the first one that actually felt like a Hellraiser movie again. We finally go back to the Hell lore, the Leviathan, the disturbing imagery, the psychosexual kind of concepts. Pinhead is at least threatening again, and the Cenobites actually look cool in this movie, which was something that was really missing. They always look cheap because of the direct-to-video crap cutting its budget. Guess who's back? Back again. Random guy's back. Tell a friend. Hey, random guy, we're on the final movie. We're about to finally end this thing. Basically, Hellraiser is sort of a soft remake of the first two movies. It is trying to copy things, but doing things drastically differently. We follow this knockoff Kirsty Cotton, who's a drunk, an alcoholic, a washed-up drug addict. She's trying to get her life in order. However, she stumbles upon the puzzle box because there's this evil rich guy named Voight who's apparently trying to do what Dr. Channard basically did. He studied the occult, he studied hell, and he's trying to gather an audience with the Cenobites, because in this version, unlocking the boxes allows you to make a magic wish that'll come true, and the Cenobites will make it happen with their hell powers. Basically, this evil rich bastard is buying prostitutes or homeless people and sacrificing them for the puzzle box because you need to give it souls, like a trade for a trade. And he's trying to get it. They gave him immortality, but it's not the way he expected. He gets this weird obelisk gizmo skewered through his body, which is keeping him alive, but also in tremendous pain. It's brutalizing his nerves and frequently stringing them along, yet he's deformed now. He walks with this awkward hunch and has this huge steampunk obelisk piercing him. Take on me. The blob that ate everyone, or Monster Blood? Monster Blood. It's not solid, and it's far more effective. So basically, this Voight guy is trying to get new victims because he wants a do-over wish. So he orchestrates this scheme that basically lures the drug addict knockoff Christy to his house and along with her friends. They're basically trying to solve what's going on here. Knockoff Christy gets her paws on the puzzle box and gets wasted in the park, where her brother tries to help her, and he accidentally pricks his finger on the box and is confused as a sacrifice for the Cenobites, who kill him in the bathroom rather horribly. We don't see it, but it sounds super painful. He gets killed and taken away, and he disappears, and basically his friends and his sister are trying to find out what the heck happened to him. This remake is about on par with what they did to the remake of the recent Crow film. Oh, really? You hated it that badly? It's I thought this was definitely a step up. The Crow remake was god awful. It was shit. I agree with that. I'm not sure if I feel the same way about Hellraiser's reboot, though, because there was a genuine effort with this one. That's kind of why it got some points from me. With The Crow, they clearly did not understand a thing that made the original Crow a classic. Also, can't believe they got Pennywise to be the Crow. Yeah, that gave me some false hope that he was going to be good. But no, they completely cucked him. You plan to do the two Monster Bloods separately or count them as one like Pumpkinheads? We are going to count Monster Blood as one. It is technically a two-parter, so, you know, why not? We're going to do Monster Blood and more Monster Blood in one video. So, Not Christie and her expendable friends basically uncover the mystery, and this leads them to Voight's mansion, where it basically becomes like kind of a Scooby-Doo mystery, but R-rated. They enter the house, the Cenobites are there, they reveal that, oh, you're gonna be sacrifices, and they get into a lot of weird Scooby-Doo chase scenes, which I did think was rather ridiculous, because the Cenobites are not monsters who chase you, they are cosmic entities. Like, you come to them or they find you no matter what, and seeing the Cenobites chase them around, getting stopped by gates is definitely kind of nerfing them a bit. We do meet female Pinhead in this, and she's once again acting as the voice for the Cenobites, and I do think the girl playing her does fairly decent. She's no Doug Bradley, that's for sure, but she definitely gives Pinhead this creepy, priestess kind of vibes. It's back to chaotic neutral Pinhead, which is why I was okay with her, because this is a lot more truer to Pinhead's character than the last 10 films have been, basically. Oh, Emily, you came just in time to watch us talk about the last movie. The box, you opened it. I came. Hi, Emily. No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. Okay, sounds good. Do you plan to do the same with the evil camera story? The first and the sequel. We're debating that, since it is a kind of a separate episode rather than a two-parter, but it might be easier to put them together. We'll see. Wolf is doing that one, though. It's Wolfin' time. Yo, Cat. Hey, Emily. Hello, Emily. Yeah, we're talking about the plot of the reboot Hellraiser right about now. It's basically kind of this Scooby-Doo mystery. They're uncovering what's going on. We find out Voight is still alive, and he basically becomes a composite of Frank Cotton and Dr. Chenard. He's obsessed with the occult, he wants the power, and he's manipulating others into dying and being sacrifices for him to open the Cenobite portal. Yo, just some? One thing I did not like about the reboot, though, are the victims. They are very boring, completely dull, flat characters, so interchangeable. Only the main girl really has a story arc going on. Everyone else is literally just there to die. They have no persona. You do not get a feel for them. You don't feel anything when they die except for the pain of the blood and gore, but that's about it. You should check out Burleezy's video titled Scooby-Doo Exposed. It's hilarious. We might. I'm trying to do a Scooby-Doo crossover with someone, but time will tell if that forms into anything. So, yeah, basically, the kills in this are pretty good. If you love the gore of Hellraiser, this one is back in full form. One of my favorite scenes with Girl Pinhead is that she captures one of the innocent girls and is suspending her on the chains and takes one of her pins and stabs her throat to hear the sound vibration of her screams. It's that is a very cool scene and very disturbing. She's getting pleasure out of doing it. Very visceral imagery in this one. Imagine if Pinhead was about to tear their soul apart, then a whole bunch of cheese puffs rain down on him. Yeah, that would be funny, but that doesn't happen here. It is back to dead serious, hardcore, R-rated horror movie, which is kind of why it won a few points from me. I do think it's pretty okay. Unfortunately, this starts to unravel when we reach the final act. Like, a whole bunch of random stuff starts happening. Well, we find out that not Christie's boyfriend was actually a twist villain and was a goon being paid by Voight the whole time to seduce and lure her here to the mansion and kill her, like, for money this whole time. And it's like, wow, that is so contrived and so much reaching. It is, like, very bizarre. It's like, I did not like this plot point, but a lot of people did because, oh, he's supposed to be the new generation's Frank, which, yeah, I got that, but it's like, this was a lot of random sequence of events type of movie. But no, she kills him. Voight finally gets an audience with the Cenobites, and he begs them to retract his gift. He wants a new gift. He wants pleasure, and Pinhead decides, oh, so you seek something you like. And yeah, you could probably tell where this is going. I'll say the actress playing Pinhead is good, but same can't be said about the love interest from Cowboys and Aliens playing Gozer in the Afterlife or Ghostbusters. Oh, you mean Olivia Wilde? Yeah, she didn't really do anything in that. Okay. So, yeah, basically, Voight, surprise, gets betrayed, and exactly like Dr. Chenard, he's turned into a Cenobite, basically. They take him down and crucify him on this Cenobite creating machine where he's given to the Leviathan, and looking straight into it turns you into a Cenobite, and he's getting ripped apart, deformed, and twisted, and probably be the villain of the next movie, I guess, or he just got his comeuppance. So, the girl basically survived. She gave all the sacrifices herself to spare her own life. Pinhead asks, oh, do you want your magic wish since you have survived and solved the puzzle box without dying? And she's like, oh, I don't want your gifts. I've seen everything that you have to offer. I want nothing to do with you. And Pinhead, I guess, gets the last laugh by telling you, oh, okay, so you want to live with the regret, the suffering knowing that you paid their souls, and I guess it's supposed to mentally torment her inside knowing that it's all her fault that all these people basically died because of her, and that her soul will forever be looked upon by hell as the first who rejected their gifts. And yeah, that's it. No, don't know if she kicked her addiction habits. She just walks off. She managed to save one of her friends, like her brother's boyfriend, basically. And they both walk out, and the boyfriend asks, was it all worth it? And like the little girl just is dead silent and clearly traumatized by the events and refuses to answer as they drive away, and the house like gets absorbed by the darkness because symbolic of hell. And that was basically it. Yeah, I'm gonna put this one on demons to some, angels to others, because it is a very messy film. It is clunky, it is flawed. It does have a lot of plot contrivances and some stuff that really doesn't make sense, but I thought it was a major step in the correct direction. Like, Hellraiser the reboot definitely felt like it was made by people who loved the saga, people who definitely wanted to do something new with it. We get more of the hell lore explored, we get some gruesome gore, creative kills, Pinhead is back to being her usual smart chess master, chaotic neutral self. And the Cenobites looked cool and scary again. This reminded you that Hellraiser is supposed to be scary, and it didn't rely on all the grossness, some weird things occur, but its plot definitely needed tweaking. That was definitely a mistake. And yes, I am young, as I told you from the Final Destination video. Better than Halloween Ends, though. Yeah, it was much better. This reboot was much better than the David Gordon Green timeline because it actually cared about its saga and wasn't disrespecting fans. I won't deny it is not a classic. I did not see what everyone else saw in this movie, and praise it to the high heavens that we finally got a good Hellraiser. No, we finally got a decent Hellraiser again. It is a decent Hellraiser. It did not dethrone Doug Bradley's first two masterpieces for me, but it was a huge step in the right direction. So with that, that pretty much wraps up my ranking of the Hellraisers. If you're new here or finally watching the stream for once, we'll go over them one last time. Tear Your Soul Apart has Hellraiser Inferno at rock bottom, worst bad guy of the series and not even a Hellraiser movie. Then Hellraiser Revelations, the worst cash grab of the series, and pretty much had zero thought or intelligence put into it. Then, I'm sorry, Emily, but Hellworld is at rock bottom too. It is a cringe fest and the stupidest movie of the series. Definitely deserves Tear Your Soul Apart. And Hellraiser Deader, it had an interesting concept, but it is also the same problem. It was not a real Hellraiser movie. It is bad, the main character is annoying, the effects suck, the mystery's a mess, too many jump scares, and a really lame... Crap. Okay, my reconnection was successful. As I was saying, Hellraiser Deader. The only thing it has good for it is that you see Maria Hill's boobs. That's about it. That's what it has above the rest. Then, A Waste of Good Suffering. Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, which I do not like. I think it is terrible. I think it was the series' downward spiral. It has the goofy comic relief Cenobites, which I hate, and Pinhead basically became a generic slasher in this story. Then it's Hellseeker. This one finally brought Kirsty back, but it is just a complete retread of Inferno, just slightly improved and slightly better. Beetlejuice, yeah. Boo this man. It's just opinion. Everyone has them, right? I'm not wrong, Emily. I'm not objectively wrong. Boo this man. You know it's true. It's like, it's so bad it's good, which is why it's above Revelations and Inferno, definitely. I will admit that, but as a Pinhead movie and a huge fan of this franchise, I just can't get over how much awful it is. Then next is Hellseeker. This one had, as I said, this one had an interesting idea. I love Kirsty, so she definitely won at points above Tear Your Soul Apart. I definitely like the direction. This one had an interesting concept, but it did have a lot of weaknesses and did fall flat in the end. Also, just like Halloween, they stopped numbering them, which makes it confusing. Yeah, thankfully Hellraiser doesn't have huge continuity after 4. Then, Demons to some, Angels to others. Hellraiser Judgment. This is easily the best of the direct-to-video stuff. This one is a nice return to form for the saga. They definitely did interesting things, and we finally get to see heaven in Hellraiser, and we also get Pinhead getting his comeuppance, which is so satisfying. That definitely won it points. It's not a high-tier classic, but if you're a Hellraiser fan, you might like this movie. Then, Hellraiser 4, In Space. This one had decent ideas and definitely some dumb fun. I really like that they did explore the lore more and wanted to do something new with Hellraiser, but there's a lot of cheese in this movie. It is goofy, it is over the top, and the space part is just so surreal and out there that it really turned off a lot of fans. Nevertheless, I will defend that this was one of the okay movies. Then, Hellraiser the Reboot. This one is also an okay movie. It is definitely a solid return to form for Hellraiser. I would say it's more like the Halloween 2018, where it's okay, but because it's coming after such crappy movies that came before it, it was a blessing, a breath of fresh air. Definitely a huge saving grace for the saga, and it pretty much saved a lot of fan love for it, which I do admit I like. However, it is not perfect. There are flaws, and the story is really messy, particularly by the final act. Then, as you can see, this is the first that didn't have any good. Come to Daddy has no one coming to Daddy. Sorry, didn't make it that high. And we have such sights to show you, where we have our S-rank classics, Hellraiser 1 and Hellraiser 2, because these were the ones that were based on the books. These both are legends, they are classics, they are top-tier horror movies, they solidified Pinhead and this franchise's name in the horror community forever. I love them both, and I highly recommend them. I honestly wanted to review this saga, but unfortunately I don't think I can because this is some heavy R-rated material, and there's no way in hell I can talk about this without getting age restricted. So unfortunately, the tier list it is. Have you ever heard of Aphex Twins Come to Daddy? You should go watch the music video. No, I have not heard of that. And yeah, if you can't see, this is my list. Sorry the ad is blocking, but who cares? It's all the tear yourself apart trash down there. So yeah, this completes my ranking. I really love the Hellraiser saga. I consider it a horror classic, even with all the garbage we have down low and in between. Hellraiser is definitely good. Pinhead deserves a lot more respect. I'm glad Billy and Mandy even showed him more respect because he was fun. Doug Bradley is a legend, and he is the saving grace in this entire franchise. Definitely love it, and it will make you absolutely fear being sent to hell. Good news, my soul has stayed intact. Very good. So, I guess that's it. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more videos posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I hope in the future you join us for those sights I have to show you. Goodbye.